Hello, everyone. So, Republicans in Congress have decided to effectively make life worse for the people that they're supposed to be representing. So, this is an article from The Hill. Conservative Republicans propose $14 trillion in cuts to balance the budget. Now, this article is a riot for many reasons, as you'll see as I begin to read it. So, the Republican Study Committee, a conservative GOP House caucus, called Wednesday for cutting $14 trillion and spending over a decade to balance the budget and produce a surplus. We faced a year of unprecedented spending. The group's leaders wrote in a letter on the proposed budget. The letter was spearheaded by RSC Chairman Jim Banks. So what they're referring to, this unprecedented spending, is Biden's moderate centrist spending over this past year. Let's continue. As you can imagine, getting our spending under control and eliminating the deficit will prove to be a Herculean task. The group's alternative budget proposal would virtually eliminate the deficit by 2024 and go into surplus by 2026 by making aggressive cuts to discretionary spending and mandatory programs relative to their current projected paths. It would cut $2.5 trillion from Medicare projections, $3.3 trillion from other health programs, including Medicaid, and lop another $3.5 trillion from other mandatory programs that largely comprise the social safety net. So they want to get rid of your way of life. Discretionary spending, which funds the government, would drop by $3.5 trillion, reducing its size as a share of the economy by a third. The RSC budget comes just more than a week before President Biden's full budget proposal is set for release on May the 27th. In that budget, Biden is expected to lay out a fiscal plan for the country over a decade, incorporating his infrastructure and family support proposals alongside higher taxes for corporations and the wealthy. He will also lay out his plans for mandatory spending programs such as Medicare and Social Security, some of which have limited runways in terms of funding from specialized trust funds. Beyond the immediate fiscal year, long-term budget plans often have little to do with what policies are enacted. President Trump's budget proposals, for example, each proposed paths to eventually balance the government's budget, but the deficit ultimately increased every year of his presidency. So this is incredibly damning for many reasons, but probably the top reason is that these same Republicans that are for these cuts, to these social programs, Medicare, Medicaid, etc., supported Donald Trump's 2017 tax cut bill. Now, if you were to ask Donald Trump, and I think he actually was asked this by Sean Hannity in an interview, and he said, "What were you most proud of, for your presidency?" And his answer was essentially, we cut taxes at an astronomical rate. We cut taxes. And then he talked about the military and all this other shit. And we'll get into the military in a second. But Donald Trump's 2017 tax cut bill, 83% of those benefits went to the top 1%. So he didn't cut taxes for me and you. He cut them for literally the highest of highest earners in this country. That tax cut bill increased the deficit by $2 trillion. These same people that are calling for these cuts and this decrease in spending supported that tax cut bill that increased the deficit by $2 trillion. Why weren't they complaining about the deficit then? Why weren't they complaining about the budget then? It's all theatrics. It's all a farce, okay? But let's just take a look at what they're trying to get rid of here. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, other health programs, essentially the entire social safety net. These are programs that are insanely popular. And we've seen over 20 Republican states, Republican governors have axed the federal unemployment that people have been receiving. They're on this crusade about, the American people not wanting to return to work because they're getting too much money from the government or whatever. A bunch of stupid nonsense that we've debunked 100 times over. Many people have debunked 1,000 times over. Makes no sense, right? So they're going for the social safety net here with this insane draconian budget proposal, because that's what it is. And all of these programs that they're looking to cut are insanely popular. They're supported by an overwhelmingly majority of the American people. Who doesn't like healthcare? Who doesn't like unemployment insurance? Now, our healthcare in this country is absolutely abysmal. Okay, millions of people are uninsured. Millions of people aren't insured at all. 45,000 to 60,000 people die every year from lack of adequate health care. Okay, but they don't want to improve it. They don't want to nationalize the healthcare system in this country. They want to get rid of it effectively and make it to where millions more people lose the health care that they have currently, which isn't even all that adequate. I think it was somewhere around 15 million people lost health care under Donald Trump. But that goes into the theatrics. That goes into the clownery that is American politics. You see, when Donald Trump was on the campaign trail, he said very openly, and I almost said honestly, it wasn't honest, it was a lie, but he said very openly, I'm not for cutting Medicare and Medicaid. You want to know why they got to say that shit? Because if they come out and actually tell you what they're for, and the American people realize it, they won't vote for them. What reasonable person on the face of this earth, as it pertains to this country, is going to vote for someone that says, I want to get rid of your health care. I want to make it to where your grandmother or your grandpa doesn't receive that constant level of income that they get from their Social Security. I want to make it to where their lives are harder, your lives are harder, and I want to funnel more money up to the people that make the most of it, my friends, okay? The big CEOs, the big business owners. Those people would never see any office, ever. The people would turn on them. And that goes into another thing, the military. Not once did they mention our insanely bloated military budget. Never mentioned. Over $900 billion, tinkering upon $1 trillion, will probably hit that number one day. A bigger military budget than the next 10 countries combined. Most of those countries are our allies. Not even mentioned. Not even mentioned to cut it 5, 10%. If we cut it 50%, it'd still be larger than a majority of the other countries. I mean, this is absolutely insane. Our police budget, they keep throwing money at the police, right? But that is honestly a means to controlling the population. So you do these draconian tactics to get rid of programs that would help the people. The people get riled up. You know, they may start a quote unquote a revolution. I don't think there'll ever be a revolution in this country because there's too much individualism, too many distractions. And so they deployed the police, these armed guards, to kind of keep the people in place whenever they act out because they've been so thoroughly shafted by this government that's supposed to be serving them. And do you notice how much they play into the culture war? You know, God forbid Colin Kaepernick takes a knee for the flag. God forbid somebody says something like Black Lives Matter. God forbid you criticize this country. You know, all of a sudden you're not a real American. You're not a patriot. You know, the Chinese caravans that are coming to destroy you. The Russian enemies that are hiding in your closet. All of the foreign enemies in the Middle East, you know, the Black Lives Matter protesters, Antifa, all of these different things that they say, communism, socialism, all of these different ridiculous terms that the right throws out to try to distract you and keep you from looking at what really matters. That's all it is. It's a distraction because they don't want you to actually see what their policies are and what they're actually for. They foresee a country where it serves only a few people, okay, where those people enrich themselves and they're insanely rich and they hold all the power, okay, and they have a really strong military. That's where most of the money goes. So no government spending whatsoever, no social programs for the mass of people, no healthcare, no nothing. That's the country that they foresee. And that is an incredibly awful society. That's an incredibly damning state of living for the mass of people. And we can't allow that to happen under any circumstances. The only thing that policies like this does is exacerbate the race to the bottom. That's all it does. You see, in a recession, in a depression, you need to spend. That's how you get out of it. If you look back to the 1920s, the Great Depression in the 1920s, in the 1930s, there was this big boom. What happened? What did FDR do? Now, it was partly because of World War II, among other things, but he created these vast social programs, the first ever minimum wage, the first ever unemployment insurance, the huge federal jobs program that employed at least 15 million people. He spent a lot, and that helped us get out of the Great Depression and strengthen the labor force of this country as a result of it. They want to do the exact opposite. They want to do Austrian economics. These people have no recollection of modern monetary theory. They have no recollection of Keynesian economics. All they know is austerity and the further beatdown of the labor force of the American people and taking things away from them that would help them. Now, with all this talk about budget cuts and what have you, I want to tell you what happened back when Ronald Reagan was president, and him and his administration decided to cut Social Security benefits for people of the age 62 and older. So this is what happened. When this plan went public, Reagan's approval rating plunged by 16 points in one poll. The administration withdrew the plan, but not fast enough to stop the Democratic House from voting it down 405 to 13, and the Republican-controlled Senate from voting it down 96 to 0. Not a single person was for it, and the proposal died. The warriors on the right complained that it did not at all add up to anything like the revolution they had been promised. By the time Reagan left office, the government spending was up 18% in real terms, and the federal deficit was 186% higher. And if you're wondering why the politicians weren't for it, it's because they know it's political suicide. They know that if they promote beliefs that are in favor of cutting these insanely popular social programs, then it's political suicide. The people will never vote for them again, because these are programs that help out the massive people and keep them from going under. And these programs don't need to be cut. They need to be strengthened. They need to be strengthened. We need the nationalized healthcare system. We need to give people more than the measly $300 for unemployment insurance. We need to raise people's wages, okay? A lot of the social safety net programs that they're trying to axe, we actually need to improve. But I know this falls upon deaf ears to them, and they'll never change. But that's why we have to continue to fight, and we have to make sure that we ultimately win the fight. Because if these people get in control and actually enact these kinds of draconian policies, one can only speculate about the mass devastation that would overcome this country as a result of it.